Chris Jericho was in the news this week, and not because he is scheduled to be back soon on AEW television. He may never be back on AEW television ever again, if these reports are to be believed. Jericho has not been in the ring since losing the Ring of Honor World Championship to Bandito at Dynasty back in April. And the following Dynamite, where he told Big Bill and Brian Keith that he was disappointed in them, and until they change that, it's best that he leaves. That was the last time we saw him. The real reason that he left was twofold. Number one, he had a Fozzy tour coming up. That tour ran through the middle of May. Number two, it was reported at the time that Jericho felt his character needed a reset, and it would be best to take himself off TV for a while, which was absolutely needed. I mean, this guy was as stale as a month-old loaf of bread. Now it's been 4 months since he's been seen on TV, and there's a lot of chatter about his AEW contract, which is due to expire at the end of this year. Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio said, Jericho's actually a really big story. His contract is up at the end of the year or late in the year, and there's certainly been lots and lots of talk about WWE. I know from a WWE standpoint, there is lots of talk there about Jericho. You know, people speculating Royal Rumble. Nobody has officially said anything, nor will anyone officially say anything. So that's from Dave. Fightful followed up with their own report on Wednesday that confirmed Jericho is signed with AEW until the end of 2025. So he still has many months left on his deal. Big Bill and Brian Keith are no longer listed as part of the learning tree. The WWE rumors started up after Jericho liked an Instagram post from somebody suggesting a WWE return. That's really what got all this started. And Jericho's very good at being able to kind of read the room and know how to get people to talk about him. And all it took was one liked Instagram post, and social media just got set ablaze with all kinds of rumors and conspiracy theories and fantasy booking scenarios about a Royal Rumble return and a WrestleMania return, like all these things that started really all from that one thing. But the Fightful report also said that one WWE higher-up said Jericho is on good terms with the company. The boys from WrestleVotes Radio have said, we can confirm after speaking to our sources that there is significant interest in Chris Jericho coming back to WWE once his AEW contract would allow him to do so. We're told that several within WWE, including active talent, would like to see him return. Despite spending the last 6 years with AEW, Jericho has remained friendly with a number of people inside WWE, we are told. And according to that source, they ultimately do expect the deal to be completed once Chris is legally able to do so. I am still not convinced that this is not going to end up being more of a way for Jericho to leverage even more money out of Tony Khan for a new deal. And it would be very smart of him to do so. You know, if he does want to stay with AEW, how do you maximize your value with your deal coming up? By teasing a return to WWE. Now, when Randy Orton's contract was coming up for expiration in 2019, he used AEW, which was only first starting up at the time. He used AEW as leverage to get himself a better deal and a lot more money to stay with WWE. It's smart business. Jericho could well be doing the same thing here, right? Liking a post here and there, or if he starts dropping cryptic teases, maybe he doesn't want to leave. But we don't even know for sure that Tony Khan cares enough to keep him around if he's effectively going to be bidding against himself. You know, Jericho's an interesting case because he has done so much in his career. He's reinvented himself multiple times. He's gone through different character transformations and has been more successful than not with it. But this most recent time with the learning tree stuff, like it really felt like the bloom was finally off the rose. If we're being honest, it's been that way for a while now, even before the learning tree. But no one can deny his importance to AEW when that company was first getting off the ground. I mean, more than Cody Rhodes, more than the Young Bucks, more than Kenny Omega. The Jericho signing in 2019 was Tony Khan's most important signing for that launch. He was able to sign away a major name from WWE, an established name on television that people knew, with a proven track record of success on the national stage. It's why I said at the time when it was Jericho against Hangman Page to crown the first AEW World Champion that Jericho was the logical choice. Hangman was not established yet. And Jericho was, right? Put the belt on Jericho. It's a face that people watching on TNT would instantly recognize if they're any kind of real wrestling fan. And then from there, you could build your new stars up. Guys like Hangman and Darby and MJF and Sammy Guevara. And there was value in Jericho forming the inner circle and surrounding himself with younger talent that he could try to elevate. Sammy Guevara, he benefited from it to a degree. Sammy had his own issues that killed his momentum there for a while. Jake Hager and Santana and Ortiz, it actually got to a point where Santana and Ortiz, they were wasting away as background players to Jericho. Like, that stuff was going on for so long and there was no upward mobility for them that it was actually working against them. Like, how much did it really help those guys, like the Hager and Santana and Ortiz, like in the big picture? Not much. Then it was the Jericho Appreciation Society. And they threw Daniel Garcia in there and Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. Two guys that WWE got rid of. Jericho threw them a lifeline. Two fellow Canadians. Daniel Garcia, there was potential there with him and Jericho in the ROH title, and there was an obvious story which they teased, and they never explored it after the big swerve they did. You know, I can understand trying to get him to show more personality instead of just being the great technical wrestler and saying, okay, you know what, instead of having him in the Blackpool Combat Club, we'll have him in the Jericho Appreciation Society, and he came up with that silly dance that got over for a minute. But he probably should have ended up in the Blackpool Combat Club with Bryan Danielson. Then came the Learning Tree, which seemed to be building to a split with him and Big Bill and an eventual match between the two of them. And then Jericho went on hiatus. And now we're never getting that blow off with Jericho and Big Bill. Because even if Jericho comes back, it looks like the Learning Tree stuff is just over. If he comes back, it'll be something completely new. You know, I'll give him credit for working with Orange Cassidy and putting him over because OC, he did come out of that better off than he went into it. But for so many others, this is why it became a running joke. The Jericho vortex, it's a real thing. And I don't mean that in a good way. You know, he would work with guys like Ricky Starks and work with a guy like Action Andretti and Hook and even put some of them over in the end. But how many of them were truly elevated by working with Jericho? How many of them came out of those feuds and those programs better off coming out of them? You can't put all of that on Jericho. A lot of it is also the booking and Tony Khan's inability to follow up with them in any kind of meaningful way. He gets blamed for it too. But even Jericho's program with someone like Adam Cole or the stuff he did with Eddie Kingston, it was to their detriment. Like, I remember Eddie Kingston and Chris Jericho had a really good match at Revolution a few years ago. But after that, it just dragged on endlessly for months and months. And the question needs to be asked, what value does Chris Jericho bring to AEW in the year 2025? You know, the answer in 2019 was a lot of value. In 2025, not so much. You know, we helped get the company off the ground and they're secure for the time being. They got their $600 million media rights deal. You know, Jericho does not move the needle for them anymore. He hasn't for a long time. Tony Khan put the Ring of Honor World Championship on him twice with the idea that it might help them secure a television deal for Ring of Honor, and that never materialized. In the ring, with the right opponent, he can still have a solid match. I mean, like that last one he had with Bandito, right? And how much of that was Bandito? Bandito's awesome. But, I mean, those are few and far between these days. He's 54 years old now, and he looks it when he's in the ring. Outside of being a veteran presence behind the scenes and helping out in that capacity, I don't see where he brings any value to the AEW product anymore. Not on camera. And he won't move the needle for WWE either, outside of that initial return. And that's really his best bet at this point. If he goes back to WWE, it's going to generate a lot of excitement initially because it's been almost a decade since the last time we saw him on their TV. And there are a lot of WWE fans that don't watch AEW. Chris Jericho shows up all of a sudden as a surprise. It's like, oh my God, where's he been? Chris Jericho's back. I haven't seen him in 8 years. Right? The last time he wrestled for WWE was the Greatest Royal Rumble. And think about that. That was the very first Saudi Arabia show that they ever did. They've done a lot more since then. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. And also nostalgia. It's a hell of a drug. So a surprise Royal Rumble return would be something I could see happening, and that would be something that would generate a lot of reaction. Funny enough, if he did make a surprise Royal Rumble return next year, the Royal Rumble is in Saudi Arabia, which is the last place that we saw him working in the ring for WWE. But like a surprise Rumble return, a Hall of Fame induction is inevitable, and then a part-time schedule. That would be the way to go with Jericho and WWE. When I say part-time, I'm talking no more than half a dozen PLE matches and working some international tours. That's it. That's it. That's all it needs to be. So there is value in him having one last run there, but less is more with him at this point. In AEW, he just overstayed his welcome. But there are other considerations if you're Jericho. He has outside projects. He's got his podcast, Talk is Jericho. What happens with that? You know, WWE's been building up their own podcast network. Do they just add his show to their lineup? Do they take ownership of that? I mean, Undertaker ditched his old co-host, Matt, and dropped him like a bad habit to take the check from WWE and replace Matt with his wife as his co-host. Cody Rhodes, he's got his podcast. Stephanie McMahon has her podcast. So, I mean, I could see Jericho's landing there, but that's not all he has. He has the Jericho Cruise, which he's been doing since 2018. He's got another one scheduled for November of next year. He took the cruise idea originally to WWE. He took it to Triple H, but they shot it down. He wanted to get some WWE talent on the tour, on the cruise, and they basically told him in so many words to fuck off. Once AEW started up, he was able to get all these AEW stars to come on the boat and do live matches. I mean, look at the talent lineup for the most recent cruise. Will Ospreay, Tony Storm, Bobby Lashley, MVP, Takeshita, Ricochet, and like 20 others. 75% of the AEW roster ended up on that cruise. If he goes back to WWE, he's not going to be getting AEW talent on that cruise anymore. He's going to lose access to all of those people. Would WWE work with him and allow him to book their talents on the cruise and get legends booked on the cruise? Probably not. None of the big names anyway. I mean, look, admittedly, it's a little bit different when Dynamite airs on a Wednesday in the middle of the week. You know, WWE's got SmackDown on Fridays. They got Raw on Mondays. I think the cruise usually takes off on a Thursday, comes back on a Monday. So no, you're not going to have access to, you know, that many big name talents. Does the cruise go away? Does he want to continue to do it? Is he willing to sacrifice it just to go back to WWE? What about Fozzy? He's got another tour scheduled in the UK next February, right smack in the middle of Royal Rumble season and Elimination Chamber season. So all that to say, you know, for Jericho, he's got a lot to think about because even if he's just part-time, he's got a lot on his plate that he doesn't necessarily want to give up. Vince McMahon is not there anymore. Maybe they would be more willing to work with him now. But in his mind, maybe it's easier to sign with Tony for more money for another 2 or 3 years. Take the money and just be able to do all these other ancillary things that he's doing. Does Tony Khan want to keep Chris Jericho? That's the other question here. I cannot imagine, personally, I cannot imagine that he would not make a play to keep Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho is the first ever AEW World Champion. Tony loves Jericho. Would he really just let him walk without trying to keep him? I highly doubt that. So it may come down to that as much as anything. How far is Tony willing to go to keep Jericho at a time when Jericho has less value to him in ring than he ever has in the 6 years that he's been with the company? Is he willing to break the bank Okada style to keep Chris Jericho, even if it's just to keep him from going back to WWE? Or does Tony see things the same way, that he's gotten all that he can out of Jericho and it's time to move on peacefully, respectfully, without any drama? Basically the opposite of how Cody Rhodes left and how CM Punk left. There's no need to burn any bridges here. Does he let him walk or not without a fight? One thing about Jericho, I will give the man his flowers. I may not have been much of a fan the last few years, but whatever he does, his body of work and what he has been able to achieve in his career over the course of 30 plus years is among the greatest careers that anybody has ever had in the history of the business. He made money and he found success everywhere he went, from ECW to WCW to WWE to New Japan to AEW, all of them. Tony Khan has said he credits the match that Jericho had with Kenny Omega at the Tokyo Dome as the inspiration for starting AEW, because that match did big box office. And it confirmed to him that there was a market outside of WWE for pro wrestling that was not being serviced at the time. So he's had a very blessed career. And I know he's still having fun and he has no plans to quit anytime soon. That's what he said. But there's a right way and a wrong way to use Chris Jericho, and whether he stays or whether he goes, whoever he works for, I hope they're smart enough to know the difference between right and wrong.